What if I told you that changing the words that you use in your subject line could double your income from your emails? Would you want to know more about that? I'm sure you do, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about in today's video. And hey, if we have not met yet, I am Lise, founder of Hustle and Groove, and I have worked with over 1,000 creative entrepreneurs and helping them ditch social media and create daily sales using their email lists. And we're all about email marketing here at Hustle and Groove. And today I want to really speak to you about subject lines. Because the reality is, you can write the most amazing email, but if no one's actually opening your email, then how are they going to see that amazing email, right? We've talked about storytelling, we've talked about the nurture and sell framework, but we haven't talked about what comes first, and that is your subject line. Now, there are some psychology hacks that we're going to talk about today, and specifically my 3 go-to subject line formulas that you can steal. So we are going to dive into those right now. So I thought we would look at my Kit account so you can kind of see exactly what it looks like when you have subject lines that are working for you and subject lines that are working against you, because I am not perfect. I'm not here to tell you that every single subject line that I put out into the world is going to work, but I do want to show you the difference, and it is going to showcase one of the subject formulas that I use a lot, and it is literally, without fail, probably my best subject line that I use. I wonder if you can spot that as we go through this. So on average, I am looking for at least a 40% open rate. With the size of my email list and the amount of emails that I send each week, 40% is actually fairly high and fairly, outside the norm. The average, right? If we want to talk about averages, if you're sitting there going, what am I shooting for? The minimum open rate that you want to be getting is around 25%. So that's an okay, but we definitely want to do better. And the higher your open rate is, the better. Now, a couple of caveats here that I think it's important to understand. If you have a fairly new email list and you're only sending emails once or twice a week, then it's going to take a little bit for you to kind of get your open rate to what you want it to be. And your open rate is not the only metric that we're looking at. We also need to look at that in conjunction with our click rate. This gives us a true understanding of how healthy our email list actually is, because our open rate can be, skewed a little bit because a lot of the email providers, so Yahoo, Gmail, whoever, right? Whoever you're using, they will often auto open an email, like basically say this person has opened the email even if they haven't. It's so weird that they do that, because at the end of the day, we should be controlling what we open and what we don't. But for whatever reason, and I'm sure if you know the reason, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below, they are auto opening an email, and that sends a signal back to your email marketing platform that the email has been opened. And it might not actually be the case. So whilst we're looking at these open rates, we can kind of take them with a slight grain of salt if we only look at them on their own. So we're also always going to want to look at your click rate at the same time, which is why it's so important that you always provide a reason for people to click inside every single email that you send out, even if it's just to vote on something or it's to go and check something out. It doesn't always have to be to sell, but it definitely needs to be a reason for them to click. Okay, let's dive into these different subject lines and let's assess them and see what is happening here. So as you'll note from my account, I pretty much am sending almost daily emails. And most of the times, at 95% of the time, I'm sending daily emails. There are times where I might not send something on a sad day, but you can see here that I've seen some on a sad day. Sometimes that might just be to a specific segment. Other times I don't send. So loose rule of thumb, 6 days a week, sometimes 7, just depends. The reality is what we're looking at here are the subject lines. So as we scroll through here, you can see this third column that we're looking at. So if I'm following my arrow, that is our open rate. Now you can see that I actually have a fairly strong open rate that is over 40%. And when I segment down, it's even higher. So you can see here, this particular segment here, it's only going out to 14 people. Almost all of those people opened this email, right? So 10 out of 14 actually opened this email. Now, I can actually trust this metric because when you segment, so when you're not sending an email to your entire list, when you segment, you tend to have better open rates. And I'm actually segmenting with my daily email. So I have a daily email community segment that is made up of a few different elements, namely people who have gone through my welcome sequence are going to get this email. Now, if someone is still in the middle of the welcome sequence, then they're not getting this email. So that's why this segment is smaller than my actual overarching list, which is just over 7K. But what I want you to pay attention to are the subject lines. As we go through this, I want you to pay attention to the subject line and then the corresponding open rate and see if you can start to pick out which ones are the ones that are actually doing really well. And then I'm going to pause when I get to one that is a little bit lower than normal, and we can start to understand why. So the very first one that we can see here, which is kind of outside the norm, is this one here that is 32.45%. Now, there are a couple of factors as to why this might not have worked. One, it went out in the evening. I typically send emails in the morning, anywhere between 6 a.m. and midday. That's kind of the time that I send emails, and that's actually the time that most of my audience open them. As you can see, at 8:04 p.m. at night when I sent this one out, a lot of my audience aren't looking at their emails at this time, and rightly so. I'm not checking my emails after 5 p.m. basically. So, and the subject line just said discount books. Now, it stands out, it's short and sweet, but combined with the time that it went out, not so great in terms of the actual open rate, but the click rate was high. So the people who did open did appreciate that particular email, but it's definitely on the lower side in comparison to all the other emails around it, which are significantly higher. So then as we scroll back through, we can see that we have got other things going on here. Now, this email here, all about the words, this has literally only gone out in the last sort of 8 hours. So the open rate here will change. So normally I'm looking at an open rate after 24 hours. That's when you've got like the true reflection of people actually going through it. So you can see it's already fairly high for this sort of first half of the day, and the click rate is also really good for that amount of open. So all of that to say, what are the actual subject lines, right? Let's get to the point here, Lise. What are the subject line hacks and what are the formulas that you can use to ensure that you're getting high open rates, but also getting these click rates, right? We've got some really good click rates here, and you can see sometimes it lands, sometimes it doesn't. This particular Saturday side note, there was only one link to click. So it was very intentional and it was a test. So I'm also all for testing. So let's dive into the 3 subject line formulas that I use on a consistent basis. And I wonder if you've already picked up what one of those is yet. So let's start with my favorite, and that is the question subject line. I use this a lot. It is literally my go-to, and it's the one that does tend to get the highest open rate and click rate, depending on how long that question is. So let's scroll down to the bottom here, and you can see why bother with email question mark. And you can see here it got a 44.73% open rate, but only a 0.11% click rate. So that's really, really low. Really interesting to see that number. And then if you go to the next one, we've got marketing that feels good, question mark, good high open rate. Again, low click rate. Now, this could be because there are some things happening in the email that suggests that this is not quite aligning. So if we go up to one where there is a higher sort of click rate, then you might start to understand why these work and why they don't. So number one, definitely do a question if you want to get open rates. Like if you want to just start to get your open rates going, then a question is without fail one of the fastest ways to do that. The next formula that I'm a huge fan of is using the quotes. And this is where you might pull something from your actual email. So typically what I like to do is write my email first, then write the subject line versus writing the subject line first and then writing the email. Now, there is no right or wrong way, but for me, if I worry about the subject line to begin with, then I really struggle to write the email. So I want to write the email first. Then I can go and have a look at what a subject line is going to be. Often when I write my emails, I will drop some kind of bomb in the email that would make a really great kind of quote for the subject line. So that is the second formula, is to use quotation marks or like a quote, pulling directly from your actual email. And then the last subject formula is to simply go with no more than 5 words in your subject line. And I do this all the time. So you can see here words that get more sales. And this actually resonated. So 44.52% and an over 1% click rate. So words that get more sales. So 9 times out of 10, I'm trying to keep them under 5 words or 5 words or less, or I'm using a question, or I'm using quotation marks. And oftentimes I combine all 3. Now you can also go for more of a curiosity as well, where we just have 1 word in your subject line, but that gets a little bit harder to do if you don't have an engaged audience. So some of this is layered through depending on the engagement of your audience. So the more engaged your audience is, the less you need to worry about your subject line, because they're pretty much going to open your emails no matter what, because they see your name and they're like, oh, cool, Lisa's sending out an email. I love what she writes. I'm going to open it. And so that's what happens over time. But in the beginning, when you're getting more comfortable with sending out emails and getting your audience more comfortable with receiving your emails, then you definitely want to try these 3 subject line hacks to see what formula works best for you and what kind of aligns with the way that you actually want to communicate with your audience. So I think it's also important to talk about the fact that we also don't want to use clickbait. Now, clickbait is where basically the only reason that you use certain words in a subject line is to get people to click. Makes sense. We want people to open our emails. But when it turns into clickbait is where your subject line has 0 to do with your actual email. So don't do that, because it's the fastest way to get people to unsubscribe from your email list, because they're just like, well, that doesn't make any sense. You got the click, right? You got the open, but you didn't retain the subscriber. And that's what we need. We need subscribers in our world so that we can present our offers to them on the regular. So never do clickbait. Make sure that whatever your subject line is relates to the content that is actually in your email. So how does this all lead to sales, you might be wondering? Well, remember how we talked about the fact that you can write the most amazing email, but unless it's actually getting opened, then it doesn't matter. We follow on from that and go, okay, we need to have people open our emails, we need to have an amazing email, and then we need to have a strong call to action. So that is where the nurture and sell framework comes in. And if you're consistently doing all of these pieces, you're getting people to open your emails, you're nurturing and selling in every single email, and people are clicking, then you're going to start to see sales coming in. And if you're not, then that is another metric that you have to inform you as to what is potentially not working. And we're going to talk about that in the next video that is coming up on your screen. I'll see you there.